going to briefly talk a little bit about things like suburban sprawl. This is something that should have been taken, just like everything else I talk about, something, or almost everything else, should have been taken care of a long time ago. Experts have been talking about this for a long time, even suburban sprawl. Maybe less so some of the other things that I might talk about here. But let's think about the case in the United States here of what's actually happening. Okay, sometime around World War II, a lot of the political elites really consciously put suburban sprawl into motion because they wanted to create economic growth. The reason why it creates economic growth is because it's going to end up using more resources. You're building more roads out and creating subdivisions, and then you're creating commercial lots. You're creating more infrastructure and more demands in every way, shape, and form. So yeah, if you want economic growth, that's what you do, because they were afraid of another recession. So they went the easy way out. And a way that you can make a lot of money on too, or your business partners or whoever you're siding for when you're in office. A lot of money, a lot of wealth to be made, a lot of power to be had. Obviously not the ethical thing to do. The ethical thing would be proper management sources. Now, this gets into country living. All right, the only people that, if you're gonna manage your resources properly, the only people that should be out living in the country are people who work in industries out there. Farmers, miners, or woodsmen, or even researchers, and other various industries. It's common sense, because if you're sending all these normal people out in the country, you're increasing your demand for roads, for utilities, and then everything else just exponentially, all other costs exponentially increase. It's one of the most asinine ideas if you're trying to have any type of resource conservation at all, or conversation. This is one thing I don't hear about. Like I mentioned before, yes, the experts have been talking about suburban sprawl for a while. They're definitely in the minority. They're not very mainstream at all. But the more wise of the scholars have been talking about that for a while. But not many people have been talking about how we're just also going into the country to the extreme and creating all this. They're not talking about the exact, methods of wasting resources and creating pollution. So you just got to think about that for a second. Well, you're talking about more roads. You're talking about more utilities, as I mentioned. You're talking about more traveling expense, more traveling time. So more risk of accidents. And all this piles up exponentially to ridiculous levels.